Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Sutta class. We will start, as usual, with the Namo Tassa. Feel free to join if you like. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So, hello everyone and welcome to the Sutta class. Today we will continue reading the Bhaddāli Sutta. This is Majjhima Nikaya number 65. And we already started last time reading the first half of this sutta. And this sutta is about the monk Bhaddāli. And Bhaddāli seems to have been quite an elder monk already at the time of this sutta. So he seems to have been ordained for quite a while already. And also his practice doesn't seem to have been very strong. And he seems to have had a little bit of attachment to various things. So this sutta is about the occasion when the Buddha laid down the training rule, the Vinaya rule, about eating only in the morning, eating before solar noon, so only from dawn to solar noon, and not eating in the afternoon or in the evening. And so the other monks and nuns were training in this rule, but Bhaddāli refused to train, and he just told the Buddha that he is not going to keep this rule. And so they spent an entire rains retreat together, the Buddha and Bhaddāli, and obviously the other monks and nuns. And for this whole rains retreat, Bhaddāli didn't go to see the Buddha. So he missed out on all the teachings. He missed out on this great practice opportunity, all because he was stubborn and because he was attached to eating the food at any time that he wanted. And so finally, when the rains retreat was over and the monks were preparing a new robe for the Buddha, and it was clear that very soon the Buddha would start wandering around again and he would leave that place, the monks told Bhaddāli it would be really good if he thought a little bit about the situation and whether or not he wanted to go to the Buddha and apologize, because once the Buddha travels, it's much more difficult to reach him and to clear up the situation and to make amends. And so finally, after many months, Bhaddāli went to the Buddha and he apologized. And then the Buddha gave him a teaching and he explained how it was very important to keep the training rules, because sila and the training rules, and also the beginning stages of the gradual training, where you train in sense restraint and where you train in moderation in eating and moderation in sleeping and mindfulness in daily life and all these kinds of things, they are very, very important foundations for the higher stages on the path. So if you actually want to develop jhana, and if you actually want to develop the higher stages, the higher knowledges, and of course arahantship, then you need to have a very, very strong foundation. And so the Buddha tells him that it's very important that he gets the foundations right, because otherwise he can meditate all he wants. He's not going to develop on the path because he's just lacking in these basic things. And so that's the point where we stopped reading last time, at the point where the Buddha explains about arahantship, how to become an arahant. And of course, based on these foundational trainings that Bhaddāli isn't doing. And so at this point, we will pick up the sutta again. I have put a link in the live chat to Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. And if you click on the link, it should take you right to the place where we stopped last time. So the Buddha just explained about how to become an arahant, and then Bhaddāli says to the Buddha. Thereupon the Venerable Bhaddāli asked, "Venerable Sir, what is the cause? What is the reason? Why they take action against some bhikkhu here by repeatedly admonishing him? What is the cause? What is the reason why they do not take such action against some bhikkhu here by repeatedly admonishing him?" So Bhaddāli asked the Buddha, how come there might be some bhikkhus who constantly break rules, and other bhikkhus also break kind of the same rules, or they do just kind of the same things. But some of the bhikkhus are constantly admonished by the other Sangha members, and some bhikkhus are not admonished by the other Sangha members. So how come there seems to be this double standard? Because obviously what we also see is that Bhaddāli wasn't admonished by the Sangha for those 3 months. So we know from other suttas that usually when somebody breaks a rule or acts somehow unsuitably in the Sangha, then what the Buddha would usually do is he would call that person and he would investigate the matter. And if the person really misbehaved, then the Buddha would be very strong in admonishing them. And we know from other suttas how he didn't hold back at all. He was like, misguided man, how can you do this? And it's not suitable for a monastic. And he would be very, very clear. And obviously we also know from other suttas that is what usually happens. Also, other monks and nuns admonish each other. But here, of course, in the case of Bhaddāli, it seems that nobody has done that. He was just left alone for 3 months and he could just do whatever he liked. And as I mentioned, Bhaddāli was already an elder monk at the time of this sutta. So he had been in the Sangha for a while. And obviously, Bhaddāli knows how they usually deal with people that misbehave. So Bhaddāli was wondering, why didn't anybody admonish him kind of before this? Why did people just leave him alone for the 3 months of the rains? So he's asking, what is the cause? What is the reason why some people get admonished and other people don't get admonished? And so the Buddha says, here, Bhaddāli, some bhikkhu is a constant offender with many offenses. When he is corrected by the bhikkhus, he prevaricates, leads the talk aside, shows disturbance, hate, and bitterness. He does not proceed rightly, he does not comply, he does not clear himself. He does not say, let me so act that the Sangha will be satisfied. Bhikkhus, taking account of this matter, think. It would be good if the Venerable Ones examine this bhikkhu in such a way that this litigation against him is not settled too quickly. And the bhikkhus examine that bhikkhu in such a way that the litigation against him is not settled too quickly. So here is a bhikkhu, and he is a constant offender, which means that he breaks rules all the time. Similar to what Bhaddāli is doing, because obviously the food rules come up every single day, and if you don't follow the food rules and you eat in the afternoon, then you break that rule every single day. But still, as we will see, this is still somewhat different from what Bhaddāli was doing. But here in this case, there is a bhikkhu that is a constant offender. But he is also very stubborn. When he is corrected by the bhikkhus, he doesn't really see the problem. And what usually happens when when somebody has broken a rule in the Sangha, usually somebody will talk to them and just point it out. And if the person acts in good faith, then they will admit their mistake and they will go through the appropriate procedure to clear the offense. But the first step is always that the person themselves need to admit that they made a mistake. So you go there, you ask, did you really do this? And then the person will either say, yes, I did it, or no, I didn't do it, or yes, I did it, but there were such and such special circumstances why I had to do it that way. Because the rules obviously have some kind of exceptions, sometimes in special circumstances. The first step is always you ask, and the other person has to admit that they did it. But here in this case, when somebody goes to those bhikkhus and tells them you made those mistakes, and then those bhikkhus prevaricate, they don't really want to answer. So they try to evade the question, they try to talk about something else. They don't really want to lie and say they didn't do it, but they also don't really want to admit that they made the mistake. So they try to somehow change the topic. And then, of course, you can't really do anything. You're kind of stuck, because if they don't admit it, then you can't proceed with clearing the offense. But also it shows that they're really acting in bad faith, that they are not trying to actually train in the rule. They're not taking the Sangha seriously. It's very disrespectful to the Sangha to act in this way. And so they also show hate and bitterness. So maybe they start criticizing the person who pointed out the mistake and start to blame them and start to be aggressive or something. And as the text says, they don't comply, they don't proceed rightly, they don't try to clear up the offense. And they also don't say, let me so act that the Sangha will be satisfied. So obviously, when you are a monastic, then you live with the Sangha, and it's very important that there's harmony in the Sangha and that you get along well with the other monastics around you, because otherwise there's constant conflict and constant disturbance and nobody can really focus on their practice. So purposely creating problems for the Sangha is kind of showing that you're really acting in bad faith and that you have no intention of actually properly training in the Buddhist teaching. And then the other bhikkhus who see this and think about the matter, they think, well, let's not settle this matter too quickly. Let's really make a big deal out of this so that the other person, the misbehaving person, gets the message that this really isn't okay what they are doing. So there is a procedure in the Vinaya when there's somebody who is constantly creating problems and constantly breaking rules but doesn't act properly. Then you can impose kind of special penalties and you can impose special restrictions on them to really kind of get the message across that this isn't okay, the way they behave. So that is that seems to be what the Buddha is talking about here, like not helping them to clear the offense quickly, but actually really sending them the message that this isn't okay. So that is the first case, a constant offender that makes the life very difficult for the Sangha. And then there's the second case. But here, some bhikkhu is a constant offender with many offenses. When he is corrected by the bhikkhus, he does not prevaricate, doesn't lead the talk aside or show disturbance, hate, and bitterness. He proceeds rightly, he complies, he clears himself, he says, let me so act that the Sangha will be satisfied. Bhikkhus taking account of this matter think, it would be good if the Venerable Ones examine this bhikkhu in such a way that this litigation against him is settled quickly. And the bhikkhus examine that bhikkhu in such a way that the litigation against him is settled quickly. So this is a very similar case. There's somebody who constantly breaks the rules, constant offender. But this person is different. This person really acts in good faith. When they are corrected by the Sangha, then they admit their mistake. They don't lead the talk aside. They don't try to evade the question. They take the Sangha seriously. They show respect. They act in the proper way. And they comply with the requests of the Sangha and they take the appropriate steps to clear that particular offense. And they say, let me so act that the Sangha will be satisfied. So they're interested to keep harmony in the Sangha. They're interested to have a good relationship with the other monastics. They don't want to make a problem for the others. They're trying to do the right thing. And then the bhikkhus, like the rest of the Sangha, thinks, okay, this person is a constant offender, but clearly they're doing the best they can. So obviously, hopefully, that doesn't happen too often, that there are those constant offenders in the Sangha, but some people just have a lot of defilements. Maybe they really joined the Sangha with the best intentions and they really want to train, but it's just that there's a lot of greed, hatred, and delusion in their mind, and because of greed, they maybe break the food rules and eat all the time, or out of hatred, they constantly pick a fight with others, or out of delusion, they're constantly unmindful and do all kinds of crazy stuff. But when you point it out to them, then they are sorry and they try to clear the offense and try to do the right thing. And then the bhikkhus think, okay, they are trying to do the right thing. Let's just settle this matter quickly, because making a big problem out of this isn't going to help anybody. They are full of defilements, okay, but they are doing the best they can. And we just need to give them time so that hopefully over time the training will work and the defilements get less. But making a problem out of this isn't going to help anyone. So this kind of litigation, they're trying to settle quickly because this person actually acts in good faith. So that was the second case. Then The third case, here some bhikkhu is a chance offender without many offenses. But when he is corrected by the bhikkhus, he prevaricates and leads the talk aside, and he shows disturbance, hate, and bitterness, and he does not proceed rightly and comply, and he purposely disturbs the Sangha. And so the bhikkhus examine him, and then they decide to act in such a way that the litigation against him is not settled too quickly. So this is very similar to the first case, except that in this case, it's not a constant offender, but a chance offender. They break the rule from time to time, but even then they act in bad faith, and they're not trying to do the right thing. They're not trying to clear the offense. And of course, in that case, the bhikkhus also think that they need to send him a very strong signal that this kind of behavior isn't okay. So they're going to make a big deal out of this and not settle this proceeding very quickly. And then the fourth case is, of course, very similar. Here, there's some bhikkhu who is a chance offender without many offenses. When he is corrected by the bhikkhus, he does not prevaricate. He acts in the proper way. And the bhikkhus examine that bhikkhu in such a way that the litigation against him is settled quickly. So this is somebody who occasionally breaks a rule, but he does the right thing. And then, of course, everybody is trying to settle this quickly so that, harmony is restored and everybody can just go back and focus on their practice. But then there's also a fifth case. Here, some bhikkhu progresses by a measure of faith and love. In this case, bhikkhus consider thus friends. This bhikkhu progresses by a measure of faith and love. Let him not lose that measure of faith and love, as he may if we take action against him by repeatedly admonishing him. Suppose a man had only one eye. Then his friends and companions, his kinsmen and relatives would guard his eye, thinking, let him not lose his one eye. So too, some bhikkhu progresses by a measure of faith and love. And the bhikkhus then think, let him not lose that measure of faith and love, as he may if we take action against him by repeatedly admonishing him. So here's a fifth case, and this is somebody whose foundation in the Dhamma is very, very weak. They only have a small amount of faith in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and Sangha. They only have a small amount of love or positive feelings for the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. So their monastic life is already very, very shaky, and their commitment to the practice is already very, very shaky. And the other monastics see that their monastic life is hanging by a thread. And if we start criticizing them and pointing out their mistakes, then they're going to give up the training altogether, and they're probably going to give up practice altogether. And then they lose this amazing opportunity to actually get out of samsara and suffering. So obviously nobody wants to take that away from another person. So in that case, when somebody is really, really feeble and shaky in the practice, then everybody is kind of treating him like a raw egg and trying to be super, super careful around them. As in the case of somebody who has only one eye, then all their friends around them will be very careful so that nothing happens to the second eye, the one eye that they have left. And in the same way, everybody would just, be super, super, super careful with a person whose practice is so feeble and so shaky. And even though they may make mistakes, probably people are just going to overlook it so that you don't have to criticize them, and so that they don't lose that last little bit of faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So that is the fifth person, and then the Buddha says, this is the cause, this is the reason why they take action against some bhikkhu here by repeatedly admonishing him. This is the cause, this is the reason why they do not take such action against some bhikkhu here by repeatedly admonishing him. So Bhaddāli was wondering, how come nobody admonished him for 3 months, even though he constantly sees other people who break the rules being admonished? And now he gets the message is because his own practice is really, really feeble and really, really shaky. And all the other monastics see that his practice isn't going anywhere. And so they're just really careful with him, and they're really treating him like a raw egg, and nobody is going to point out any mistake to him just to protect him. And as we have seen, Bhaddāli is actually an elder in the Sangha, but even though he is an elder, his practice still is so feeble, and everybody sees that, and everybody's just trying to protect him. So it's not actually a good message for Bhaddāli, because the Buddha just says, well, everybody can see that you're not really committed to practice, that you're not going anywhere in your practice, and everybody is just, treating you like a little child, so that, you're not going to lose that last bit of practice that you have. And that is why he wasn't admonished. So, and then Bhaddāli asks, Venerable Sir, what is the cause, what is the reason why there were previously fewer training rules and more bhikkhus became established in final knowledge? What is the cause, what is the reason why there are now more training rules and fewer bhikkhus become established in final knowledge? So now Bhaddāli wonders, how come there more and more rules are being implemented all the time? Previously, we didn't need those rules, but now the Buddha lays them down. And he also sees that previously, in the early days of the Sangha, a lot of people gained arahantship very quickly, even though there were no training rules. But nowadays, obviously this is towards the later part of the Buddha's teaching, this sutta. Nowadays, there are quite a lot of training rules, but a lot less people gain arahantship, even though it's said that the training rules are there to actually support the practice and to help us on the path to arahantship. So it seems a bit counterintuitive. If the training rules are so helpful, then now that we have them, there should be a lot more arahants, right? So Bhaddāli is wondering if those rules are actually helpful. And the Buddha says, that is how it is, Bhaddāli. When beings are deteriorating and the true Dhamma is disappearing, then there are more training rules and fewer bhikkhus become established in final knowledge. The teacher does not make known the training rule for disciples until certain things that are the basis for taints become manifest here in the Sangha. But when certain things that are the basis for taints become manifest here in the Sangha, then the teacher makes known the training rule for disciples in order to ward off those things that are the basis for taints. So the Buddha says, well, that's how it is over time. The Dhamma deteriorates, the practice deteriorates. And we see even in the Buddha's lifetime that already happened. In the first years of the Sangha was kind of very strong. A lot of people in the Sangha were arahants, or at least stream enterers, probably the majority of people. All the people there, or most of the people there, had actually been renunciants, non-Buddhist renunciants, before they joined the Buddhist Sangha. So they were already very strong ascetic practitioners. They had already some previous experience in a monastic lifestyle. They had already some previous experience in other techniques of meditation very often. So they were already kind of committed to this kind of lifestyle. So they didn't need the kind of training rules because they already knew how to do this. And also beings that come to the Buddha in the early years of his dispensation obviously have a very strong karmic affinity to Buddhism. Oftentimes these are the people that are already ripe for the breakthrough to arahantship or for the breakthrough to other higher stages on the path, stream entry, non-return, and so on. And of course, in the beginning, the Sangha is much, much smaller. So only people who are really committed will join the Sangha. But as the Sangha grows very large, somewhat random people join the Sangha, and not everybody has the same single-minded focus on the practice, and not everybody is as committed as those early practitioners. And so since there's a lot of different kinds of people coming into the Sangha, and not everybody is that committed, obviously people with more defilements will join, and then a lot of strange behavior or misbehavior will become manifest in the Sangha. And at that point, the Buddha needs to lay down training rules, because people don't have this natural feeling anymore for how a monastic should behave or for how a renunciant should behave. And obviously, even in the Buddha's time, that seems to have happened. The Buddha already at his time talks about beings that are deteriorating and the true Dhamma that is disappearing. And in our time nowadays, 2.5 millennia after the Buddha, we can see that even much more, when there are very, very few arahants in the Sangha or noble beings in the Sangha, even though we have all these many training rules. And then the Buddha continues and he says, those things that are the basis for taints do not become manifest here in the Sangha until the Sangha has reached greatness. But when the Sangha has reached greatness, then those things that are the basis for taints become manifest here in the Sangha. And then the teacher makes known the training rule for disciples in order to ward off those things that are the basis for taints. Those things that are the basis for taints do not become manifest here in the Sangha until the Sangha has reached the acme of worldly gain, the acme of fame, of great learning, of long-standing renown. But when the Sangha has reached long-standing renown, then those things that are the basis for taints become manifest here in the Sangha, and then the teacher makes known the training rule for disciples in order to ward off those things that are the basis for taints. So here the Buddha points out another reason why he needs to lay down training rules. So over time, in the beginning time, the Sangha was very small and all the members of the Sangha were very committed to the training. And the only reason for joining the Sangha was because you want to train in the Buddha's teaching and you want to reach arahantship. But then later on, the Buddha's fame spread and a lot of people converted to Buddhism and the Sangha became very large and many people made large donations to the Sangha. And then the Sangha had large properties and they had many assets, large monasteries, and a lot of supporters and a lot of political influence, because we know that the Buddha regularly talked with the various kings and leaders of his time and gave them advice. And many of the most influential politicians in his time, for example, King Bimbisara and King Pasenadi, were actually disciples of the Buddha. So then it became attractive to join the Sangha also for other reasons other than just practicing the path. For example, if you want to have material support without working too much, you can join because you know the Sangha is materially very well provided for. You don't have to do much. You can just hang out all day and people will still donate food to you and robes and everything you need. Or maybe somebody is interested in some kind of influence and political power. Then, of course, having such a large organization as the Sangha is very attractive. You can join and then kind of go up the ranks. And eventually you have a lot of junior monks or junior nuns under you that you can boss around and so on. And we also know that not only the Buddha taught the kings, but also other monks and nuns taught the kings and the political leaders. So it also gave you a lot of prestige. It gave you a very good reputation. So there were a lot of reasons, very kind of selfish reasons, why people might want to join the Sangha. And of course, then the Buddha needs to lay down training rules to restrain this. Because if the Buddha, for example, this rule that he laid down here about eating only once a day, this is kind of a somewhat ascetic practice, or eating only in the morning time. You can eat twice in the morning. But that will kind of deter people who are very attached to sensual pleasures, who want to eat all the time. It will deter people who maybe don't really have a genuine vocation, spiritual vocation, or genuine wish to join the Sangha. So that is another reason why the Buddha laid down those training rules. Because once the Sangha becomes large and influential, it attracts all kinds of people, and people that you might not actually want in the Sangha. And then the Buddha says, there were few of you, Bhaddāli, when I taught an exposition of the Dhamma through the simile of the young thoroughbred colt. Do you remember that, Bhaddāli? No, Venerable Sir. To what reason do you attribute that? Venerable Sir, I have long been one who did not fulfill the training in the teacher's dispensation. So the Buddha says, there was an occasion when there was only a very small group. So the Buddha says there were few of you, Bhaddāli, when he taught this simile of this young colt. And so this Buddha says, you were there with only a few other people, and I taught you this simile. So I gave you a very special Dhamma teaching that was like targeted specifically for you. So it wasn't like a big crowd where I gave a very general teaching, but it was only a small group, and I gave you a very personalized teaching that was directly suitable for you. And do you remember that? And Bhaddāli says no. So the Bhaddāli basically got a personal teaching from the Buddha, and still he doesn't remember it. So we can already see that Bhaddāli wasn't really that committed to the practice. And so the Buddha says, how come you don't remember it? Or why do you think that you don't remember it? And Bhaddāli says, well, for a long time I haven't practiced properly. And then the Buddha says, that is not the only cause or the only reason, but rather by encompassing your mind with my mind, I have long known you thus. When I am teaching the Dhamma, this misguided man does not heed it, does not give it attention, does not engage with it, does not engage it with all his mind, does not hear the Dhamma with eager ears. Still, Bhaddāli, I will teach you an exposition of the Dhamma through the simile of the young thoroughbred colt. Listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, Venerable Sir, the Venerable Bhaddāli replied. So the Buddha says, well, it's not only that you don't train properly, but you don't even pay attention, like you don't even listen when I teach. So how can you train when you don't even know what you're supposed to train in, because you don't even listen to what I'm saying? So the Buddha gave him a teaching, but Bhaddāli didn't even listen. He didn't even pay attention. So obviously he can't do any training because he doesn't know how to do it. And so the Buddha says, well, I'm going to teach you the same thing again. So this time now pay attention. And Bhaddāli says, yes. And then the Blessed One said this. Bhaddāli, suppose a clever horse trainer obtains a fine thoroughbred colt. He first makes him get used to wearing the bit. While the colt is being made to get used to wearing the bit because he is doing something that he has never done before, he displays some contortion, writhing, and vacillation. But through constant repetition and gradual practice, he becomes peaceful in that action. So there is a young horse, and a horse trainer has obtained this horse, and the horse is obviously wild and untrained. And then the first step on the path of this training of this horse to tame the horse is to make him wear the bit. And of course, this is a very unusual action for that horse. Horse has never done that before, feels somewhat uncomfortable. So it has a lot of contortion and writhing and vacillation. So it's trying to resist and trying to get away. Trying not to do this, but over time, as you keep on doing it, the horse gets used to it, and eventually it's totally peaceful and totally normal for that horse to wear that bit. So that is the first step of the training of that horse. And then there's the second step. When the colt has become peaceful in that action, the horse trainer further makes him get used to wearing the harness. While the colt is being made to get used to wearing the harness because he is doing something that he has never done before, he displays some contortion, writhing, and vacillation, but through constant repetition and gradual practice, he becomes peaceful in that action. So then they move on to the second step. Now the horse learns to wear the harness. And again, it's very unusual for the horse, very uncomfortable at first. Horse tries to get away from it, but eventually it gets used to it, and then it's completely normal and is very peaceful and relaxed with wearing that harness. And I think we can all relate when we are learning something new that we have never done before. At first, it feels kind of awkward. It feels like we are totally clumsy doing this. It feels like other people are staring at us, and we feel very uncomfortable. And we feel like we want to give it up again, because we feel like we are not good at doing this. but eventually, as we keep on doing it and as we keep on repeating it over and over, it becomes completely easy and normal and not challenging at all. And so anything that we want to learn, at first we are awkward in it, and then as we progress, we get better and better, and eventually it's just completely normal and second nature, and just another habit that we have. So after the horse has become peaceful with the second step, they move on to the next one. When the colt has become peaceful in that action, the horse trainer further makes him act in keeping in step, in running in a circle, in prancing, in galloping, in charging, in the kingly qualities, in the kingly heritage, in the highest speed, in the highest fleetness, in the highest gentleness. While the colt is being made to get used to doing these things, because he is doing something that he has never done before, he displays some contortion, writhing, and vacillation. But through constant repetition and gradual practice, he becomes peaceful in those actions. So step by step, the horse becomes more and more trained. The horse becomes more and more refined. It learns higher and higher kind of skills until it becomes like the highest quality horse that is fit for service in the king's army. And eventually all of this is completely normal for him. When the colt has become peaceful in these actions, the horse trainer further rewards him with a rubbing down and a grooming. When a fine thoroughbred colt possesses these 10 factors, he is worthy of the king, in the king's service, and considered one of the factors of a king. So eventually, after we've gone through all of this tough training and through all of this discomfort, there is the reward. The horse gets rubbed down and it gets groomed, and it is totally peaceful in all the actions that he has learned, and he is now fit for service for the king. So obviously, in the end, there is a very good kind of reward. There's a very kind of peaceful and very pleasant state. And then the Buddha says, so too, Bhaddāli, when a bhikkhu possesses 10 qualities, he is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What are the 10? Here, Bhaddāli, a bhikkhu possesses the right view of one beyond training, the right intention of one beyond training, the right speech of one beyond training, the right action of one beyond training, the right livelihood of one beyond training, the right effort of one beyond training, the right mindfulness of one beyond training, the right concentration of one beyond training, the right knowledge of one beyond training, and the right deliverance of one beyond training. When a bhikkhu possesses these 10 qualities, he is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. So we can already obviously see what the simile of the colt means. In the same way, it is the training of a practitioner, of a monastic. There's a gradual training, step by step. We start with simple things like sila, like generosity, and so on. We go through the various other steps on the gradual training. For example, as in this case, where Bhaddāli was tripped up, moderation in eating, other things, sense restraint, moderation in sleep, mindfulness in daily life, all these preparations that we make so that when we start meditating, we're actually able to overcome the hindrances because our mind is already quite peaceful and quite turned inward. So we can overcome the hindrances then and then develop the jhanas and develop the higher knowledges and eventually arahantship. So as the horse is trained step by step, so in the same way, the gradual training is also step by step. And each of these steps can, in the beginning, be very uncomfortable because we have never done it before and it's kind of challenging and our mind tries to sneak out of this and not do it. But as we keep on training, it becomes really easy and it becomes really peaceful, and then we can move upwards and make progress in the higher stages and the higher steps. And as the horse then finally comes to this very peaceful state where he is rewarded by the horse trainer and is also fit for service for the king and is just basically the perfected horse. So also when we go through the gradual training, obviously there is our reward in the end, which is arahantship. And as the horse has 10 qualities that it was trained in, so also a monastic that has reached arahantship has 10 qualities, namely the 10-fold path, so which is the Noble Eightfold Path, but the Noble Eightfold Path is a path of training. But once you have completed it, you no longer need to train, so then you just have completed that thing, that those 10 factors. So this is the normal 8 factors. Once they are perfected and completed, so right view of one beyond training, right intention of one beyond training, speech, action, and livelihood of one beyond training, and then effort, mindfulness, and concentration of one beyond training. These are the normal 8 factors that we know. And then right knowledge of one beyond training and right deliverance of one beyond training. These are the last 2 steps of this path that you only have once you attain arahantship. So right knowledge is obviously the knowledge of the destruction of the taints and the full understanding of the Four Noble Truths. So destruction of the taints means attainment of full arahantship, and obviously so that you can only have this factor of the 10-fold path you can only have if you actually are an arahant. And then the right deliverance means the full liberation. Obviously, this also means that you have become an arahant, so you can also not attain this on a lower stage on the path. So that is why once you complete the 8-fold path, it turns into a 10-fold path, because you have these 2 additional factors that you attain at arahantship. And of course, when you possess these 10 qualities, that means if you are an arahant, then you are definitely an unsurpassed field of merit for the world, and you're worthy of all these gifts and hospitality and salutation and so on. So again, the Buddha is trying to inspire Bhaddāli to actually start practicing seriously from where he's at, to really take the lower stages on the path seriously and to make a commitment to the training rules so that his sila becomes established and his lower stages and the gradual training become established, and he has a chance to move on through the higher stages all the way to arahantship. So that is what the Blessed One said. The Venerable Bhaddāli was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. This is the end of the Bhaddāli Sutta. I hope you enjoyed it. So if you have any questions or comments, please post them in the live chat and I will see if I can answer them. So let's see. Okay, I see a lot of people checking in. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. Good to see you. And I see a lot of Anjalis and happy emojis, but I don't see any kind of question. So I guess there's no question for today. Then we can finish a little bit early. Today is the last session for this year because I will be traveling for the next few weeks. So I'm not able to do a Sutta class on the channel. So the next Sutta class will be in the first week of January, the first Tuesday of January as usual. And we will finish today with 3 sadhus. Feel free to join if you like. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So I wish you a good rest of the day and a good rest of the month and happy holidays if you're celebrating, and a happy new year, and I will see you all next year. Take care.